Tomorrow, the Biden administration's federal vaccine mandate for businesses with 100 or more employees goes into effect. That is, if the Supreme Court doesn't have something to say about it. On Friday, the justices took part in a hearing concerning the mandate, during which the court's conservative majority seemed to signal a willingness to block the requirement. Those proceedings are scheduled to continue tomorrow. Joining me now to help us better wrap our heads around this is Dean Abramson. He is an adjunct professor of vaccine law at Florida International University's College of Law. Thanks so much for joining us tonight.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So the question before the court really is whether to allow the mandates to go into effect while they work their way through the lower courts, not so much on the constitutionality of the mandates themselves. Am I getting that right?
That is absolutely correct.
Okay, so based on the tenor of the questions and the makeup of the court, do you think this mandate has a chance of going into effect as it stands now?
I think it is unlikely. Certainly, I think it's unlikely to go into effect exactly as it stands. I think there are possibilities that either the court will stay the OSHA mandate pending further litigation, or at least put some kind of conditions on it that make it very difficult for OSHA to prosecute companies that aren't conforming to the terms of the mandate.
So I want to take a listen to arguments made by both Justices Elena Kagan and Amy Coney Barrett on either side of the debate. Let's listen, and then we'll get your reaction on the other side.
There's nothing else that will perform that function better than incentivizing people strongly to vaccinate themselves.
That the problem here is its scope, and that there's no differentiation between the risk faced by unvaccinated 22-year-olds and unvaccinated 60-year-olds or industries.
So a lot of different points and arguments made during that hearing, but what do you make of those 2 points?
Well, particularly Justice Barrett brings out an issue that's been brought out in the lower courts, the fact that OSHA tried to do something really sweeping and to capture all companies with over 100 employees without really looking at the circumstances of particular companies or particular employees. And that's kind of a real infirmity of this regulation as it has been put out. You know, it's clear that it was put out under some pressure from the Biden administration to get something done very quickly and to do something that was very broad and far-reaching. And they may have bitten off a little bit more than they can chew in terms of the way that it was structured.
But they make the argument that this is the very thing OSHA was intended for, right? That all 800,000 people have died in the U.S., and if this isn't a danger to workers, what is?
Well, there's certainly no question that there is a danger. The question is, what is the best approach to address that danger? And there's a degree to which OSHA is the agency that has the authority, that has the experts to make that decision. But there's also a degree to which, there are people on the other side who say, well, it's really not feasible. It's really not workable the way that it is articulated to put this on workplaces like this. And you're not going to end up getting the good effects that you want to get. You're going to be counterproductive in trying to carry this out.
So the argument is really the enforceability of it?
Yes, it's not really enforceable. OSHA doesn't have the resources to enforce it as written. They're going to be requiring employee whistleblowers to say our employer isn't carrying out these things, or looking at actual COVID outbreaks and so forth. And they're going to be having to do that for workplaces where there isn't necessarily a danger, because a lot of people are working from home, or a lot of people are working outdoors all the time, because that's the way OSHA structured the entire mandate.
But OSHA has required certain vaccines in the past, right? There is some, I guess, case law or precedent for that, including people who handle blood work. They had to be vaccinated for hepatitis B. Is that something like that going to be used going forward in this case?
It's possible. The bloodborne pathogen standard, which was discussed by the court at some points, doesn't mandate vaccination. It mandates that vaccines be made available to employees, and that employees acknowledge that if they're not vaccinated, they're at a higher risk. But there's no real consequence beyond that for employees who aren't vaccinated under that standard. This is the first time that the United States federal government has ever attempted to broadly require vaccination as a mandate of a population or of any segment of the population outside of like the military and federal prisoners and immigrants and so forth.
And schools.
Schools have never really fallen under the federal government, though. The federal government does attach some dollars and say that, your school districts aren't going to get these federal dollars unless you meet these vaccination targets, but it's up to the state governments. And because of that, if you go from state to state, every state has its own individual set of vaccinations that are mandated. Most of them have a certain set in common, but there are some that only a handful of states require and others do not. And that's a decision that's made at that level.
And there is a second part of this case, and that's regarding Medicaid and Medicare workers. And that does seem to have a better chance of success because it involves government-funded programs. Am I right about that, as opposed to private companies?
That is exactly right. It's because, well, it's not necessarily a private-public dichotomy. There are a lot of private hospitals that are recipients of Medicare and Medicaid funds. But ultimately, with the OSHA regulation, we're talking about the government saying we're trying to protect interstate commerce. We have a constitutional authority to do that. We're trying to use that authority to fight a disease. Whereas the CMS regulation, which is for Medicare and Medicaid funding for hospitals, is premised on the idea that we're giving you this money and we can choose to give you this money or not give you this money. It's our money to spend, and we're putting this string on the payment of these funds. And that's something that historically it seems a lot more palatable. It seems more palatable to the justices, to Justice Barrett and perhaps Justice Kavanaugh and some of the others on the court who may be more skeptical of the reach of the OSHA mandate.
So really quickly, before I let you go, what does this mean for all of us who work at companies with more than 100 people starting tomorrow?
Well, the OSHA mandate hasn't been enforced up to this point because of the various states. And the mandate actually doesn't kick in immediately. There's a supposedly a requirement that people have to start getting vaccinated, but unvaccinated workers would have to be tested on a weekly basis. And that doesn't start until February 9th. So if you have people who aren't vaccinated, there's no consequence of that immediately. The consequence would start in February. And in theory, at that point, if you had unvaccinated workers, you would have to begin testing them weekly. And if they weren't, then you'd be susceptible to facing a fine from OSHA.
Professor Abramson, thank you so much. It is confusing. We appreciate you breaking it down for us and your clarity. Thank you.
It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.